Good morning.
Morning.
I don't think New England has gotten off to the start that I'd imagine they would like, but they got a win last week. What have you seen from them, and what are you expecting to see this weekend?
Yeah, wins always help with teams, momentum, confidence. So, it came, I imagine, at a good time on their end. But, it's more our focus of, how we need to prepare for the dangers of their group. So, results aside, obviously, Carlos is one of the best in our league. I think he's outstanding player, and their attack a lot of times runs through him. So trying to find ways to limit him, which in turn will limit the other strengths that they have with some of the wingers that our guys are unfamiliar with that we're trying to get them up to speed with, and some of their other new additions. So I think structure-wise, it's there's been some similarities to some of our recent opponents. So whether that stays the same or not, there's things that we've seen in multiple games now, back to back to back, that have some similarities. So, those are some of the things that we spoke about.
Given the way that your last two, I guess, starts this season have gone with so much turnover in the roster, do you at all relate to what Caleb Porter and what New England is going through with having, I think they had 18 players change over this offseason, and how challenging the start of the season can be?
Yeah, there's always uncertainty, to start years with certain teams, whether it's new additions, whether it's a new coach, whether it's, injuries, what have you. It's challenging at times if there's turnover, and if there's, you don't have the player availability that you'd like. So, I can't speak for Caleb and their group. Every coach wants a full group to choose from, and consistency in your training group and your ideas, so that you can work on things and try to improve. And when you don't have that, it can be challenging. And I'm sure that on their end, there's pieces that they'd like to have available, just like we would. But you deal with it, and you try to prepare your group for your next challenge. And right now, our next challenge is New England, and we have to make sure that we have the right approach to this game to get a result at home. That's the expectation.
You spoke about how Evander can be such a threat on free kicks or wherever he's taking those. Carlos also had a nice free kick the other day.
Yep.
I'm just wondering, when you have a player like that on the field that can be a threat, does that change how do you ever wonder if that can open things up for you guys at open play, where maybe teams don't want to be as physical to take that foul and give them that opportunity? And I guess on your end for defense, does that work?
I'm sure teams that go into games know the strengths of the opponents, and if they have seen any clips of Evander, they probably know he's pretty good from 35 yards and maybe I'm being disrespectful with that number, and he can go more. I don't know, but you don't want to give players like that an opportunity to change a game when you might have momentum, or even when you don't. You don't want to put them in position to make plays, and it's a nice asset for us. And like you mentioned, Carlos is outstanding in those moments as well. So you have to be disciplined about how you defend closer to your goal. So whether it's a direct free kick, whether it's wide free kicks, corners, you just can't concede, bad fouls close to goal and allow a really talented player to put you in tough spots.
And then I know you guys have some injuries that you're dealing with. Can we kind of go through those with, I know Evander and Yuya were off to the side, coming back.
Both day to day.
And then Miles and Obi, how are they?
Miles day to day. Obi, he's probably the only one that we know won't be available. So he'll be probably a week. Hopefully for next week he's available. But the others are all available for the game.
Was Miles, was that related to the Charlotte game? Is that still like a lingering?
Similar,
or-
similar sensation. So the scan came back in a good way where, we'll manage it the same way we did in the lead up to Charlotte.
And then with teenage, is there any update on his return? And I know there's some concerns with guys
Yeah.
going away and not being able to get back as quickly with some of the travel restrictions. Is that
Yeah, like I mentioned before, he wouldn't be available just based on the timeline of his injury. But the latest information we got this morning was that he couldn't get the passport back. There's some political stuff going on, and that's limiting his ability to get his paperwork. So that's a day-to-day. Hopefully it is resolved as soon as possible so he can return and get his family sorted out as well. But that was as of this morning.
Pat, after the Nashville game, you talked about the how you guys took an approach of looking to be having more selfless runs or doing things to open up teammates. And I asked Corey about that because he made the run at the
Yep.
end, and he talked about he always want to be, as an attacker, be involved in the score sheet, but making that run during the PK,
Yeah.
it'll come back in the end, right? Eventually, he'll have his opportunity to score. Is that the kind of mindset you'd like to see from the team? And what do you think when you hear that kind of?
Yeah, that's
thing?
what you expect from Corey. That's how he plays the game, and that's the teammate that he is. You want that from everybody all the time. That's an unselfish player that wants to impact the game for his team in a good way. And so he won't get credit for anything on the score sheet, but the delivery from Evander is outstanding. His timing and his movement's very good, and it leads to Kevin being able to step up and make the penalty. So the more you get of those types of players on your group, within your team and on the field, the better chance you have, because he goes about it the right way. And I think that run was kind of indicative of it. He's trying to make the most of his minutes when he's on the field to help his team.
And then this weekend, the weather forecast doesn't look spectacular, particularly with the rain.
Yeah.
When, if ever, does the conversation come up for you guys about what your approach to the match on Saturday might be? If the pitch conditions change, if the weather is poor, is that something that you guys talk about and how you might change the way you approach Saturday?
Just depends, You kind of look at the forecast and prepare, anticipate what could happen. But, in this particular case, I haven't addressed it with the group. Maybe before the game when we see where we're at, but I don't want to put too much information in their head early on to have them thinking about that. I want them thinking about New England and us and how we can go play the game. And if we need to make some adjustments based on our arrival and what we see, that's no different from any other game. So we'll just kind of see where we're at on game day.
forgot to ask about Matt?
Yeah.
I know there was some questions about if he might ease in with some FC Cincinnati 2 games, but given that they don't play until next Wednesday and they're on the road, and then I think the Columbus game for them got moved, would that be an option still for him, or do you see him? I guess how do you see him kind of? If you could kind of go into I know you might not want to divulge the whole plan, but like what do you envision for him when he could start seeing minutes?
Day by day, he got 2 good days of training in, and whether it's building his training fitness, throwing him out in a game, FCC2, we're kind of a day by day. So we haven't put too much thought into what next Wednesday looks like. We wanted to get through the last 2 days, and Matt did a really good job, and his presence was felt. So hopefully get through today in a good way, and we'll go from there. But that's kind of where we're at with Matt before we're thinking about, how and where he's getting his game minutes.
And then kind of looking back, like broader, with the hamstring injuries, I mean, it's been, seems like a lot of them lately with Obi and Miles, and I think even Dotto back in preseason. It just seems like, I know it's a common injury in soccer, but is there anything that you guys are doing differently, or anything maybe you guys need to do to try to prevent those, or is that more just the amount of games that, like, I guess is there anything you could attribute those to?
We've had a good conversation about it. Garrison and, his team, primarily Garrison, have put together a really good, presentation, if you will, about some of the issues that we've had and where they've occurred on the road after the 60th minute, the surface. There's been a lot of things, the preseasons of these players. So it's thorough and it is problem solving. So that's what I'm pleased about. Of course, you want guys to be available, and we've had too many injuries. So we're looking for solutions there, but it's been addressed because it has been, a consistent theme now, I guess, for how we're losing guys. So trying to problem solve, but at least it's being addressed.
Working on something on Gilberto. What have you seen from him so far? And I know he was like a young guy that you guys saw kind of developing, but he's been kind of thrown in pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So how have you seen him grow so far, and what would you like to see out of him?
Yeah, we kind of threw him out there based on how thin we were along the back line and his early performances with the group. So we've seen some really good things, some things where you can see a young kid that has a lot to learn and develop, but in a good way, because he's he's ambitious, he's excited to learn, he's engaged, almost to a fault where it's trying to do too much too often. So this is the first stretch, like I've said a couple times, to really work with these guys and with some training ideas that he never really got over the course of the last month with our game schedule. So you can see now some of the the good and the bad coming out in training. So he's been really fun to work with, and I'm excited for the potential of him within our group. But we got to work on some things to I think get him more consistent just with decision making, with some of the ideas that we're looking for on both sides of the ball, that you can see he's not there yet, but has the right intentions. Thank you.